Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. Echoes of Malevolent Spirits. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. Arrival at St. Mark's Asylum. The sky was overcast, a heavy blanket of gray that swallowed the last vestiges of daylight. Emily pulled her coat tighter, casting a wary glance at the imposing silhouette ahead. St. Mark's Asylum loomed like a rotting giant, its Gothic spires piercing the gloom. Crumbling brickwork and shattered windows hinted at a past long forgotten, while wild ivy crept up the walls, as if trying to strangle the very memory of the building. Jake, always the skeptic, rolled his eyes as he dragged his duffel bag out of the car. Seriously? This place is a cliché, he muttered, tugging at the worn straps. His sarcasm did little to mask his unease. Even he could feel the eerie weight of the asylum's silence pressing down on them. Lisa's eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. You've seen the documentaries, Jake. This place has history. Real history. She fidgeted with the strap of her camera, eager to capture every ghostly detail. She was a firm believer in the paranormal, and tonight she was determined to find proof. Tom, the historian, adjusted his glasses and took out his notebook. It's not just the ghosts. The asylum's history is a tapestry of tragedy. Hundreds died here under questionable conditions. He scanned the faded plaque at the entrance, his voice tinged with academic curiosity. The records mention unethical experiments and unexplained deaths. Mark, the thrill-seeker, grinned as he bounded ahead, flashlight in hand. And that's exactly why we're here, isn't it? To experience the thrill of the unknown. He stepped through the rusted gate, its screeching protest slicing through the thickening fog. The moment they crossed the threshold, a chill crept through the air. The building seemed to exhale a cold breath, causing shivers to run down their spines. Shadows danced in the flickering beam of their flashlights, elongating and contracting in unsettling patterns. Distant whispers skittered through the halls, barely audible but distinctly unnerving. Jake's breath came out in white puffs as he huddled closer to Emily. "Did anyone else hear that?" he asked, his voice betraying his calm fade. Emily nodded, her expression serious. "Let's stick together. We need to stay focused." She glanced at the darkened corridors stretching before them, each turn promising deeper mysteries. The group moved forward, their goal clear. They were here to uncover the truth behind the asylum's haunted reputation, to document the inexplicable, and perhaps to confront the shadows that lingered in St. Mark's Asylum. The echoes of the past had started to stir, and the night was just beginning. Chapter 2. Exploring the Asylum. The group moved deeper into the asylum's bowels, the oppressive darkness thickening around them. The corridor stretched endlessly, the shadows seeming to pulse with a life of their own. Emily led the way, her flashlight casting eerie patterns on the peeling wallpaper. "Let's split up," she suggested, her voice steady despite the creeping dread. "We'll cover more ground that way." Jake and Lisa took the right wing, their footsteps echoing off the cracked tiles. Tom and Mark headed left, the latter's flashlight darting around like a restless firefly. Emily stayed at the rear, her senses on high alert. The air felt heavier here, each step resonating with the whispers of the asylum's dark past. In the left wing, Tom's eyes lit up as he entered a dimly lit office. Dust motes swirled in the beam of his flashlight, settling on a stack of old file cabinets. He began rifling through them, pulling out patient records and yellowed photographs. His heart raced with the thrill of discovery. "These records," he murmured, flipping through the brittle pages. They detail treatments that border on the inhumane. Mark, ever the thrill-seeker, wandered around the room, inspecting old medical equipment with a morbid fascination. "Look at this stuff, Tom. It's like something out of a horror movie." His flashlight swept over a set of rusted restraints, a chilling reminder of the asylum's sinister practices. Meanwhile, Lisa and Jake navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the right wing. Lisa's camera clicked away, but she was increasingly distracted. Her eyes darted nervously at every shadow. "I feel like we're being watched," she said, her voice trembling. Suddenly, Lisa stopped dead in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat. She saw a flickering image, a girl in a tattered dress, her face a ghastly pale. The girl's eyes, dark voids of despair, seemed to reach out to her. "Jake, look at this." Lisa's voice cracked as she pointed to the apparition. But when Jake turned, the image vanished, leaving only the empty, damp corridor. In the children's ward, Mark and Emily's flashlight revealed a room lined with dusty cribs and abandoned toys. The air was thick with an unsettling chill. Mark chuckled nervously. "Hey, if we're going to see a ghost, it should be here, right?" As if in response, a ghostly figure materialized before them, a little girl, her form translucent and shimmering. Her eyes, wide and mournful, locked onto Mark and Emily. The sight was enough to freeze their blood. Emily gasped, stumbling back, her flashlight slipping from her grasp. "We need to get out of here," she shouted, her voice filled with terror. The encounter left them breathless and shaken. They regrouped, the weight of their discoveries settling heavily on them. The asylum's malevolent presence was unmistakable, and it was clear that whatever awaited them here was far more sinister than they had anticipated. The night was just beginning, and the echoes of St. Mark's Asylum were growing louder. Chapter 3: Unveiling the Past. The group huddled in the asylum's central hall, their breaths visible in the cold, musty air. Shadows from their flashlights danced across the walls, stretching and shrinking with their unease. Emily's hands shook slightly as she relayed their terrifying experiences. "We've all seen something tonight. It's clear that this place is far from empty." Tom, clutching a stack of old records, nodded solemnly. These files, he spread them out on a dusty table, revealing brittle pages and faded photographs. They indicate that the asylum was shut down due to a series of unexplained deaths. And look here, experiments conducted on patients, cruel treatments under the guise of medical advancements. Lisa's face paled as she scanned the documents. "That explains why we're seeing ghosts of children," she said, her voice trembling. "The spirits of those who suffered here." Jake, still skeptical, ran a hand through his hair. "Or maybe we're just imagining things. This place is playing tricks on us. Maybe we're all just spooked by the stories." Lisa shot him a sharp look. "It's not just stories, Jake. I saw something. A ghostly figure of a girl." Mark, ever the adrenaline junkie, leaned in with a grin. "Well, if there's ever been a time for reckless abandon, it's now. Let's get some footage and see what else we can find. Maybe we'll catch something on camera." Emily's eyes were steely. "This isn't about thrills. It's about understanding what happened here and why these spirits are restless." As tensions mounted, the group's unity frayed. Jake's skepticism clashed with Lisa's growing dread, leading to sharp exchanges. Mark's disregard for safety further strained the group, with Emily struggling to keep everyone focused. Suddenly, the hall erupted in chaos. Objects began moving on their own. A chair skidded across the floor. A book fell from a shelf. The group watched in stunned silence as ghostly apparitions flickered in and out of view. Disembodied whispers slithered through the air, carrying fragments of mournful pleas and anguished cries. Lisa clutched her camera, tears streaming down her face. "We need to get out. This place is dangerous." Jake's face was white as he looked around, his skepticism faltering. "Maybe you're right, Lisa. Maybe there's something to this after all." Mark's bravado faltered as a cold gust swept through the hall, extinguishing their flashlights. The darkness pressed in on them, the once familiar asylum now a labyrinth of terror. "We need to stick together," Emily said firmly, her voice resolute despite her own fear. "We'll find out what's causing this, and we'll get out." As the group regrouped, their resolve hardened. They were no longer just exploring, they were facing a malevolent force that demanded answers. The night was far from over, and the asylum's dark secrets were beginning to claw their way into the light. Chapter 4: The Diary of Dr. Caldwell. The cold, oppressive darkness of the asylum seemed to close in around the group as they regrouped in the grand hallway. Emily, trying to shake off the chill from the latest paranormal encounter, stumbled upon an old, dust-covered desk partially hidden behind a fallen bookshelf. She swept away the debris and noticed a leather-bound book, its cover cracked and worn. "Guys, look at this," Emily said, her voice echoing through the hall. Her flashlight illuminated the book's cover, embossed with the faded initials D.C. in gold leaf. Tom's eyes widened as he recognized it. "That's Dr. Caldwell's diary." Lisa, still shaken but driven by curiosity, approached with trembling hands. Emily carefully opened the diary, revealing pages filled with meticulous handwriting. The entries chronicled the asylum's darkest experiments, attempts to cure mental illness through methods that bordered on the grotesque. Tom scanned the pages with mounting horror. He used untested procedures, often resorting to inhumane practices. Here, he describes using electroshock therapy on patients for days on end, trying to cleanse their minds. Lisa peered over Tom's shoulder, her eyes wide with horror. "This is beyond cruel. It's no wonder the spirits are restless." The diary detailed Dr. Caldwell's descent into madness. His obsession with breaking the boundaries between life and death led him to conduct increasingly radical experiments. His final entries were scrawled with manic urgency, revealing a twisted belief that he could harness the power of the dead to achieve immortality. "Listen to this," Emily read aloud, her voice trembling. "The boundary between life and death is a mere illusion. If I can tap into this energy, I will be able to control the spirits themselves." Her voice trailed off, the weight of Caldwell's madness sinking in. The air grew colder, and Lisa's face went pale. "We need to communicate with the spirits. They're trying to tell us something." Emily nodded, reluctant but resolute. They gathered in the dimly lit library, and Lisa set up a spirit board she had brought along. The group sat around it, the planchette positioned on the board's ominous YES and NO. "Is there anyone here with us?" Lisa asked, her voice barely a whisper. The planchette moved slowly, spelling out a single word, HELP. The temperature dropped sharply, their breaths becoming visible. Lisa's hands shook as she continued. "The planchette spelled out JUSTICE." The room grew eerily silent, the whispers of the spirits growing louder in their ears. The group exchanged grim looks. The spirits were not just restless, they were pleading for their torment to end. Emily's determination solidified. "We have to find a way to put these spirits to rest and reveal the truth about what happened here." As they left the library, the weight of their discovery pressed heavily on their shoulders. The asylum's dark past was more horrific than they had imagined, and the spirits' call for justice was a demand they could no longer ignore. The path ahead was clear. They had to uncover the full truth and bring closure to the souls trapped within these walls. Chapter 5: The Curse Unleashed. The library's heavy silence was shattered by the distant rumble of thunder. The group trudged through the darkened halls, their steps heavy with the weight of their discoveries. The truth about Dr. Caldwell's twisted experiments and the spirit's cries for justice was overwhelming. As they regrouped in the central hall, Emily looked around at her friends, their faces etched with fear and fatigue. Tom slumped against the wall, his eyes haunted. "There's something we haven't uncovered yet," he said quietly. In Caldwell's diary, there was a mention of a patient named Evelyn Hart. She was a psychic who underwent his most brutal experiments. Lisa's eyes widened. "I remember seeing a name like that in the old records. She was powerful, wasn't she? She must have placed a curse on the asylum." Jake, who had been largely silent, spoke up, his voice heavy with regret. "I've been thinking about what's happening here. It's like I'm reliving my own failures." His eyes were distant, haunted by past mistakes. "I was supposed to save someone once I failed them." Lisa placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, but her own fear was palpable. "We're all facing our fears. I can't shake the feeling that I'm losing my grip on reality." Emily, struggling to keep her own fear in check, looked at her friends. "We need to confront this. Whatever curse Evelyn Hart placed here, it's feeding off our fears and guilt." As if in response, the temperature plummeted and the lights flickered erratically. A low growl rumbled through the asylum, growing louder and more menacing. The walls seemed to pulse with a dark, malevolent energy. Shadows twisted and writhed, forming grotesque shapes that danced just out of the corner of their eyes. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut with a deafening bang. The group was trapped. The air grew thick with a palpable sense of menace. Objects began to fly across the room. Books hurled themselves from shelves, and furniture overturned violently. Emily's flashlight flickered, casting fleeting, terrifying glimpses of shadowy figures closing in. "We need to find Evelyn Hart's records," she shouted over the chaos. "She's the key to breaking this curse." Lisa stumbled backward, her eyes wild. "I can't take this anymore. It's too much." She fell to her knees, clutching her head as whispers of torment filled her mind. Mark, trying to fend off the oppressive darkness, shouted, "Stay together. We can't let this thing divide us." Tom was visibly shaken, his hands trembling as he fought off a ghostly apparition that seemed to claw at his regrets. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he cried, his voice breaking. The spirits were no longer just haunting, they were attacking, exploiting the group's deepest fears and guilt. The asylum's curse was unleashed in full force, and the group was caught in its malevolent grasp. As the group struggled to stay together amidst the escalating chaos, Emily's resolve hardened. They had to face their fears, unravel the curse, and find a way to end the nightmare. The asylum's dark history and the vengeful spirit of Evelyn Hart were more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The path to survival lay in confronting the curse and finding a way to bring peace to the restless souls trapped within these walls. Chapter 6: Descent into Madness. The asylum's walls seemed to pulse with a dark rhythm, each beat resonating with the torment of the trapped spirits. The group was disoriented, their senses overwhelmed by the escalating terror. Shadows stretched and distorted, creating nightmarish visions that blurred the line between reality and hallucination. Emily stumbled through the corridors, her flashlight flickering sporadically. The darkness seemed alive, shifting and morphing into grotesque shapes. Her own reflection in a cracked mirror looked like a twisted caricature, a haunting reminder of her mounting fear. "Stay focused," she muttered to herself, but her voice was lost in the oppressive silence. In the library, Lisa huddled in a corner, clutching her camera like a lifeline. Her eyes darted around the room, haunted by the ghosts of her imagination. "They're watching me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They know my fears." The room seemed to close in on her, the shadows whispering her deepest insecurities. Mark wandered aimlessly, his once cocky demeanor shattered. The asylum's twisted corridors seemed endless, and every turn led him deeper into confusion. "Where is everyone?" he called out, but his voice echoed back at him, a hollow reminder of his isolation. His bravado crumbled as he stumbled upon a ghostly vision of himself, a grotesque doppelganger that mocked and tormented him. Tom, in a desperate bid to escape his own inner demons, found himself in a small, abandoned cell. The walls seemed to close in, and the darkness was thick with the whispers of failed experiments and broken promises. "I can't escape," he choked out, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "It's all my fault." As the group descended further into madness, their emotional and physical isolation deepened. The asylum's curse was feeding on their fears, exploiting their vulnerabilities. The once tightly knit group was now fragmented, each member struggling with their personal nightmares. Emily, though struggling herself, found a glimmer of hope. In the library's dim light, she discovered an old, tattered book hidden behind a row of dusty volumes. The book detailed an ancient ritual, a method to appease restless spirits and break the curse. Her heart raced as she read the instructions, a mixture of relief and dread washing over her. "Guys, I think I found a way to end this," Emily called out, her voice echoing through the asylum. "We need to perform this ritual. It's our only chance to put these spirits to rest." The group, exhausted and broken, slowly regrouped. Emily's discovery provided a faint beacon of hope in their sea of despair. They had to confront their fears, perform the ritual, and find a way to end the torment that had consumed them. The path to salvation was fraught with peril, but it was their last hope to escape the asylum's malevolent grasp and restore peace to the restless souls trapped within. Chapter 7: The Final Confrontation. The library's cold, flickering light cast long, trembling shadows on the walls as the group gathered in a circle, their faces drawn and pale. Emily, clutching the ancient book, directed them with a mixture of determination and exhaustion. "We have to perform this ritual together," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "It's our only chance to end this." Jake, his eyes hollow from guilt and sleepless nights, nodded grimly. "Let's do it. We can't let this place win." Lisa, her fear still visible, took a deep breath and gripped her camera tightly as if it were a lifeline. Mark, his earlier bravado replaced by resolve, set up the ritual space according to the book's instructions. As the group began to perform the ritual, the air grew colder and an oppressive sense of dread settled over them. The chant they recited seemed to draw the darkness closer, a malevolent force keen on stopping them from breaking free. Shadows twisted and coalesced into grotesque figures, their faces a ghastly amalgam of rage and despair. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. Ghostly apparitions swirled around them, their howls of fury resonating with the asylum's anguished history. Objects flew across the room, and the walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, attempting to force them into submission. The spirits were relentless, driven by a vengeful will to prevent their liberation. Lisa screamed as a ghostly figure materialized before her, its hollow eyes and skeletal form reflecting her deepest fears. "I can't do this," she cried, collapsing to the floor. Jake, torn between his skepticism and the harsh reality before him, fought to maintain his composure. In the midst of the turmoil, Tom's eyes locked onto a shadowy figure that resembled his estranged father, The apparition taunted him with visions of his broken family. Overwhelmed with regret, Tom stepped forward, a grim determination settling over him. "I'll handle this," he said, his voice a whisper of defiance. "You finish the ritual." Tom faced the ghostly figure, his body shaking with fear. As the figure advanced, he braced himself and confronted the spectral image of his father. "I'm sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry for everything." With a final, desperate cry, he threw himself at the apparition, the energy of the ritual flaring around him. The room erupted in blinding light. The spirit's wails turned to anguished cries as they were drawn into the ritual's energy. Tom's sacrifice had disrupted the malevolent force, allowing the ritual to complete. The dark energy began to dissipate, and the oppressive weight lifted. As the light faded, the room fell eerily silent. The spirits, now appeased, slowly faded away. The asylum's oppressive darkness lifted, leaving the group exhausted but triumphant. Tom lay motionless on the floor, his sacrifice a poignant reminder of the cost of their survival. Emily, Jake, Lisa, and Mark stood together, their faces marked by the ordeal but relieved by their victory. The asylum's curse had been broken, and the restless spirits had finally been laid to rest. As they left the now silent building, they knew they would never forget the horrors they had faced, or the sacrifice that had ensured their escape. Chapter 8: Aftermath and Reflection. The morning light filtered through the cracked windows of St. Mark's Asylum, casting a soft glow over the now eerily quiet hallways. The oppressive darkness that had once gripped the asylum had lifted, leaving behind an unsettling calm. The remnants of the night's chaos were scattered across the floor, but the malevolent energy that had filled the building seemed to have dissipated. Emily, Jake, Lisa, and Mark emerged from the asylum, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. Tom's sacrifice had brought a somber end to their harrowing ordeal. As they walked away from the crumbling structure, each of them grappled with the weight of their experience. Emily's stride was steady, her gaze resolute. The ordeal had tested her leadership, but it had also solidified her confidence. She looked back at the asylum, a sense of accomplishment mingled with the shadow of loss. "We did it," she said softly. "The spirits are at peace." Jake, his skepticism now tempered by acceptance, nodded. "I've seen things that can't be explained away." "I'm sorry for not believing you sooner," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'll carry this with me." Lisa walked beside him, her eyes reflecting a newfound peace. The spirits that had tormented her were gone, and though the experience had been harrowing, she felt a sense of closure. "I feel like I can finally let go," she said quietly, looking up at the sky. "I know they're free now." Mark, his earlier bravado replaced by a more tempered outlook, glanced back at the asylum. "I think we've seen enough horror for a lifetime," he said with a wry smile. "But I'm glad we made it through." As they reached their car, Emily took out her phone and began typing up their findings, determined to document the truth of what had happened. The ordeal had not only changed them, but had also left an indelible mark on their lives. Despite the apparent resolution, the asylum held onto its secrets. As they drove away, a lingering unease settled over them. The asylum's eerie calm seemed almost too serene, as if the silence was hiding something darker beneath. Emily glanced at the rearview mirror, her eyes narrowing at the sight of a fleeting shadow darting past a window, quickly disappearing. In the quiet of the car, the group exchanged uneasy glances. The asylum had been purged of its immediate malevolence, but its history and the whispers of its past still lingered in their minds. The secrets of St. Mark's Asylum were not all laid bare, and the unsettling feeling that something remained unspoken left room for future stories. The night had ended, but the echoes of their experiences would resonate in their lives forever. The asylum had been a battleground, And though they had emerged victorious, its mysteries were far from over.